Welcome everyone, and thanks for coming to our Pacifictech AP Automation and Employee Expense for Sage 300. As Linda was saying, my name is Bill Fligg and I'm our North America Sales Manager. And with us today, we have Jamie Steele, our Business Development Manager. So a little bit about Pacifictech. We've been providing solutions for Sage 300 for over 20 years. We've been working through this ecosystem with Sage before when it was ACPAC right through to Sage 300, so we're certainly not new. Delivering Tier 1 capability and enhanced functionality to what is over 2,700 Sage 300 customers around the globe. We do this using Sage 300 Software Development Kit, otherwise known as their SDK. That's a really big differentiator between us and some of the other ISVs, because our solutions are developed using the same engineering that Sage 300 does, so that they reside inside of Sage 300 and have the same look and feel. And you're not jumping back and forth from screen to screen and syncing databases. We have a very comprehensive procure-to-pay solution, including our AP automation. Included with all that, we have some very innovative and powerful modules, which many of them interface with our web-based solution, PW Web, and our mobility capabilities that all work with 3 cloud-connected services. We have data centers around the globe in Canada, Australia, South Africa, and New Zealand. We've won a number of awards over the years from Sage that we're quite proud of, and we truly are a global ISV. If you were to look at our solutions and try to put them into 3 compartments, you would have Workflow Suite, Control Suite, and Mobility Suite. In the Workflow Suite, you have the purchasing and requisition side using our purchasing workflow. You have the payables workflow dealing with the requisitions and purchases that have taken place, and from there dealing with vendor invoices and payments. Also, we have workflow notifications that allows you to take the vendor invoices that have been approved and actually move forward in paying them through a payment workflow where senior administrator in the organization that would sign off on payments has the ability to review the invoices electronically, the managers that approved them, and authorize payment. From there, we have Control Suite. Workflow and notifications is also part of the Control Suite. Workflow and notifications gives you control over many of the master files throughout your ERP. One of which, for example, is your vendor master file where you have vendor bank account. You can put a workflow on that so that you cannot change a vendor bank account preventing fraud until a senior person in the organization has approved it. We also have Audit Logger, which some people refer to as Big Brother, which has the ability to audit user activity throughout the ERP so that you can see who's doing what in various areas of your accounting system. And we have our Mobility Suite. And in that, we have our PW Web, where you can do web requisitions, approvals, you can deal with invoice payment approvals, and also you can deal with employee expense reporting and uploading of invoices and receipts and such. Your mobility includes the mobile app, our PT Go app, where you can also approve transactions through the workflow, as well as reviewing ongoing transactions that are happening that involve you. I'm going to hand this over to Jamie at this point so he can move on with his presentation and the demo.
All right, thanks for that, Bill, and hello to everyone. So my name's Jamie Steele. So just carrying on with a few PowerPoint slides. So this one shows our different workflow solutions. So really for our session today, we'll be looking at the AP automation, which is the supplier invoice workflow, which is this area, and with workflow documents with the invoice images. So that's what we'll look at today. Or lots of clients want to know about other parts of our workflows that are available. And so on the left-hand side is purchasing workflow. So that's the whole procurement, requisitioning, approval side of things, with funds availability, which is all the GL budget checking and the PTC budget checking. So that's the procurement side of the workflow. And over here on the right-hand side is workflow notifications. So this module provides workflows in 22 parts of Sage 300. So it's a very broad module. So it provides workflows on some examples are customer master files, vendor master files, inventory items, GL account codes. So those are 4 of the areas where you can have workflows, but also some of the key transactions as well. So AP payments, AR credit notes, IC adjustments, GL journals can all have approval processes as well. All right, so those are really the, I guess, the three workflow solutions that we've got that cover a lot of Sage 300. And up above here is PW Web, which is the browser interface across all of those modules. Right, now this diagram is showing the whole P2P process, procure to pay, so the whole end-to-end procure to pay process. I won't go through this in too much detail today, but it's really these are the 6 main steps of P2P in any ERP system. And really the key point we want to communicate is that our modules have got controls across the whole P2P process. Okay, so now if we'll look at AP automation, which is what we're focusing on today. And so this infographic's got quite a lot of information in it, so I'll just go through it to just cover off some of these key concepts. So over here on the right-hand side in the green hexagon is the Sage 300 modules, so accounts payable, purchase orders. In the dark blue hexagon in the middle are our workflow solutions. These are within the Sage desktop, so they look and feel like Sage 300, and the data is all within the Sage 300 database. And so this is where you set up your approval processes, and you can also your delegated authorities, so the spending limits that users are allowed to spend up to or approve up to. And you set up your workflows. You can have multiple workflows, and each workflow can have multiple steps. So all that configuration is done here. And over here on the left-hand side are our connected services. So these are the more up-to-date technology in terms of browsers and smartphones and automated data capture. So these connected services, for North America, they're running on our servers that are in Toronto, in a data center in Toronto. If we start off over here, so this first one is DPS, which is Document Processing Service. So what this is, a lot of people are sort of familiar with the term OCR, Optical Character Recognition. I guess it's been around for a long time, but the solution we're using here is more comprehensive than OCR. So really, I think automated data capture is the best way to explain this. And this is, a real area of, we're getting a lot of interest and customers in this automated data capture. The way the system works, I think most of you will be getting a lot of your invoices coming in by email. So the way the system is all set up, it's all based around emails coming in. Your supplier sends the email to the Sage 300 customer, then they have a rule that forwards that email on to a mailbox that's on our servers in Toronto, and that's where the DPS software does the data extraction, and within 4 to 5 minutes it'll push that invoice into payables workflow. And so then when it's in payables workflow, it's then available for the AP people to then review what's been captured. They can edit it, and then they submit it into the approval process. So the AP people, their function is still, a very important one, but now instead of capturing the data, they are now reviewing what the system has captured for them. Right, so that's how the invoices get into payables workflow, and then the next question is who needs to approve them. And so you can approve them through 3 different interfaces. The first one is within Sage 300 itself. So that's for the users that are inside Sage 300, they can approve the invoices within their approval console. But with a lot of clients, they'll have managers who need to do approvals who are not within Sage 300. So that's where we've got our PW Web for our web approvals, and our smartphone app, which is called Pacifictech Go. And so this is a native app for smartphones, for Apples and Androids. Right, and so as each person does their approvals, it updates the system in real time. When the final approval's done, then Payables Workflow pushes it over into Sage 300 automatically. All right, so that's really that process. And another very key part is 3-way matching. So for companies that are running the Sage PO module, when an invoice comes in, if it's related to a PO, the Payables Workflow does a 3-way matching and the tolerance checking. So in other words, if the invoice matches to the receipt in the PO, or within $1, for example, then you can just let it go straight through without any further approvals if you want to. This is all configurable. But if there is a variance that's outside the tolerance, then that will go off to be reviewed and either approved or declined. All right, so that's three-way matching, which is very important. Now, another part of the solution is the whole credit card expenses. And so we've done some development around this area last year, and we're getting some very good feedback from customers. So really using the sort of same core AP automation system, but bringing in the data from the credit card company and then bringing that into Payables Workflow, pushing it out to the credit card holders so they then through the web or through the smartphone app can upload photos and then push that credit card report along through the approval process. So that's another part of the system that just sort of comes and it's no extra charge. Then we can also, users can create expense reports through PW Web, so out in the field, attach files like receipts and push those transactions into the approval process as well. Right, and then probably just the last area down here is AP payments. So that's an important part of AP automation. So a lot of what I've talked about up till now is around the invoice approval, but once that's done, then the next thing is the approval of the payments. And so that's also covered within our solution. All right, and yes, so I think that's all the key points there. There's another one here, E-invoicing and PEPAL. I'll come to that in a few slides. That's quite an exciting new area that's happening around the world. All right, so now this one just looks at the technology side of things or the architecture. So here's Sage 300 on the right-hand side. Here are our connected services running on the servers in Toronto. And a few, probably three really important points. The first one is that we do not store any financial or transactional data on our servers. So from a data sovereignty point of view, you can be relaxed that the data is sitting in only one location, which is inside your Sage 300 database. The next thing is from it's all real time as well. So we're not, we're not storing transactions here and trying to sync between two systems. This connectivity from these users is through to Sage 300 in real time. So just that removes the whole sort of, two separate databases and the issues associated with that. And the third point is that, we can have one land pack here, one Sage 300 land pack that can cover up to 50 people out in the field doing their approvals. So that's, makes it very cost effective. Right, and then just some key points here and some of the features and functionality that we've got here. So this is from a security perspective. So I'm sure all of you would agree that security is just becoming more and more of an important issue. So we've got some pretty key security aspects with our solutions. We can use same sign-on. So when people sign on, they use their Windows user ID and password. We've got a lot of security in place on our web servers. We've got 2FA is available. Three-way matching is also another part of the security. And ISO certification, we should have that completed within a couple of months. And also, we've got really sort of powerful tools that are doing continuous pen testing to make sure that our solutions don't have any security holes. Right, and another one is just integration. So I guess it's a strength of our solutions because we're inside Sage 300, we're integrated in with all of these great areas of Sage 300. So PJC, multi-currency optional fields, also strongly integrated with Service Manager. And then the last one there is with our PEPAL access point provider, which is StoreCove. And we'll come to that in a minute. Right. In terms of this one here, we've sort of covered off the credit card and the expense report side of things. And so here is E-invoicing. So this is using this format called PEPAL. And so this is quite an exciting revolution within invoicing between entities. It's sort of starting to roll out around the world. So it started in Europe. So you can look up on Google, there's tons and tons of information about PEPAL. And so it's an EDI format for sending invoices from one company to another, but the old or the traditional EDI has always been sort of a big company like Walmart has told its suppliers you've got to use EDI, so there's a whole power imbalance, and also it's been quite expensive and everyone's had their own formats. So with this e-invoicing, all of that, those problems have sort of been removed, and so it's a single format, and so it's it's much cheaper. And in fact, that's just part of our DPS system. So in Australia, all federal government departments have to be able to receive e-invoices by June of this year. We've got 2 government departments in Australia that have been live with e-invoicing, and we've got a number that are sort of in progress of implementing that. And now I believe the US, I've heard they've signed up for PEPOL in the last month or 2. I should find out a bit more information about that. In Canada, I'm not too sure, so I'll make a note, or Bill, Bill and Linda, if you can just make a note, we should follow up on just that e-invoicing in Canada and probably the Caribbean as well.
Sure, will do.
Okay. All right, cool. And so now with the automated data capture, we'll do a demo shortly, but this is just a screenshot of how you capture an invoice, how you train a vendor on an invoice. So when you send an invoice into the system, you need to train each vendor for 5 invoices. And so when you send it in, the system will pick up quite a lot of the fields. So you can see the invoice image on the left-hand side and the data fields on the right-hand side. And so on the left-hand side, they've got green over them. And so when you send in your first invoice, the system will actually work out quite a lot of the information itself. And this is where it's got some quite good intelligence within the system. And so this sort of comes to this whole topic of, there's been these OCR systems have been around for 20 or 30 years, but they've normally been at least $40,000 to put in, and so quite expensive. So with this technology we're using, it's a whole new sort of generation, and so it's got more intelligence, but it's also a lot cheaper. So it's sort of better and cheaper, which is always quite good. But it will actually work out a lot of these fields for you on the first invoice, but it probably won't get them all right. So then the users need to train it, and so that's very easy. You just click on the field on the right-hand side, drag your cursor over the field on the left-hand side, and then so if you do that for 5 invoices, then that invoice vendor will be trained. All right. So here is payables workflow. So here we are in the Sage environment. So here's payables workflow, and you can see it looks and feels like Sage 300. In terms of the setup, we won't have time to look through this today, but you can see you set up your cost centers, your workflows, so those are your approval processes, authority levels, and who your users are. And so down here, we've got our transaction screens, so we can enter an AP invoice if we want to, or a PO invoice, and we can attach the invoice image. Let's just open one up and just show that to you quickly. So here's an invoice that's within the system. So it looks very much like a Sage 300 invoice. You can see, all the normal header information. And down here is the GL codes. But a couple of key differences is here's the workflow document. So this is the invoice image. So that's stored within the Sage database. And so, that allows you to move to fully paperless. And this tab here is the events tab. So this shows you who this invoice is sitting with, and also what time, who entered it. And so this is like the audit trail on this invoice. All right, so you can enter an AP invoice there or a PO invoice if it's relating to a purchase order. But what we will focus on today is the automated data capture, which is the DPS, which is this screen here. So document processing service, or DPS. So if we open this up, this DPS console, this is the landing page where the invoices come into Sage 300 with the data capture already having been done. So these are a couple that I sent in this morning. And so if we look at this one here, first of all, here's one, well, a few key fields actually. Let's just explain those first. So here you can see this column, AP invoices and PO invoices. So those are your two different types. Obviously a PO one relates to a purchase order, and you can see a couple of these extra fields over here on the right hand side, the PO number and the receipt number. So as the system does the data capture, it reads the PO number. If I just open it up and have a look. So here's the invoice that we sent in. So here's the invoice number and the date. So what the system did, it read the PO number, and then it looked up to find if there was a one open receipt for that PO, and there was, so it therefore picked up the receipt number. So the software has done all of that work for the user. All right, so that's this key field, AP invoices versus PO invoices. And then another key field is this one here, which is the document source. And so for most of our customers, your PDF is the, you know, the normal source when they're coming in by email. But you can see here are some E-invoices. So these are invoices that are coming through EDI, so there's no PDF attached. And if I just double click and open one of those up, so you can see the difference. Instead, because there's no PDF, because it just doesn't exist with an E-invoice, instead it shows the E-invoice information that's come through the PayPal system. All right, so if we come back here to, let's just work with our AP invoice first of all. So we'll double click and open it up. And so on the right-hand side is the invoice image. On the left-hand side is the data that has either been extracted or derived. And so the invoice number has been extracted directly out of the PDF, so that's there. For the vendor number, what the system needs is an identifier to say who that vendor is. So for a lot of countries that have GST, the GST number's the best field to use. For the US, a lot of customers will use the phone number. It's really just any number that is unique that identifies that vendor. And we do like to use numbers. The thing with using the vendor name is quite often it can, people have all sorts of different fonts, so that can be a bit, more difficult for the system to recognize it. So that's why we like to use like a GST number or a phone number. And so just to explain the way that works. So what it does, it reads the GST number and then it comes over to the vendor master file and looks up for that GST number. I happen to know it's vendor 2800, but what the system does is it's searched on this field for that GST number, and that's how it's worked out who the vendor is. Right, the workflow and the cost center, these can be defaulted using different sort of techniques. So you can have a certain vendor goes into a certain workflow and a certain cost center if you want to. That's quite common. The document total is straight out of the PDF, so that's down there. And the document date is out of the PDF. And it's also picked up the bank account number from the PDF as well. And here's the line information as well. Right, so now this is a good time to just talk about the quality of the character recognition. So there's two types of PDFs. The first type is a system-generated PDF, so where it comes straight from someone's software, it's been emailed, and so there's been no scanning done. So that's what we call system-generated. So for those, our system will pick up or have a success rate of 95% or higher. So very high success rate. And so, but the other type of PDF is a scan. So that's where your supplier is, their system might be a bit not able to email out, so that they might print it out, scan it, and then someone manually emails it to you. And so in that case, the quality drops down because it's a scan, and then it depends on what is the quality of the scan as well. So what we say to customers is the success rate is sort of 75 to 80% or higher when it's a scan. So I think a comment Bill often makes is if it's 95%, you know, that's like it's the other 5% isn't really a failure. What it just means is that it might not pick up a field. So, you know, if it, and let's say your GST number wasn't set up or your phone number wasn't set up within say 300, the system still picks up all this other data. It just would leave a field blank like this. So, yeah, you know, so it's then just ready for AP to make the change. And then that's the next thing is AP can change any of this. They're not limited in any way. But you know, it's really important for them to just check what's been captured and make any changes. Right, so in this case, it's got it 100% right. And so what we do is click process. That takes us to the second screen, which is what we call Payables Workflow AP Invoice Entry screen. Now it's picked up the GL codes. So these have come straight from the vendor configuration of AP. We can change them if we want to, and we can change basically anything, and it's attached the PDF for us, so it saves us doing that. Now we submit it into the approval process. We can click on the Defence tab and we can see who who's the approver that's sitting with the division manager. Right, so we close that and you can see it's now completed. So we click refresh and that one will now drop off that list. So then an email can get sent out to that person. This is just our test email system. So here, this is just an example of what it looks like. So you can configure this. So we double click and so it shows us, you can see the vendor ID, the invoice number, the reference, and then here's the PDF attached. So this has gone to the manager. So what they can do is just with PW Web, they can just click on this hyperlink and that takes them to the login page and it populates the user ID. So they then just put in their password, and that can be their Sage password or their Windows password. And so now it's reading, so now this person's doing their approval through the web interface. So this shows all of their invoices for them to approve. They can, I'll leave our one sitting there just so we can approve it through the app. So if we just look at this other one, what we can do is open it in quick review mode. And so the idea with quick review, it shows everything on the screen, on a single screen. So the managers don't need to click around. So here they can see the invoice image, and on the left-hand side, they can see all the information. They can change the GL codes if you want them to, or otherwise they can just approve it and save, and then scroll to the one before or the one after. So you can see that's very quick for them to do their approvals. And so now that's changed to approve. So if we wanted to approve that, we can say fine, and then click postmark document. So that'll move that one along. I've left our one sitting there. So what we'll do is log out of here and we'll come and log into our smartphone app. So I'm obviously in a browser here, but this is exactly what the app looks like on an Apple phone or an Android phone. So it shows us our different types of approvals. So here are our invoices. We've got 4 AP invoices and 1 PO invoice. So we click on this arrow to look at the details, and there are the 4 invoices. So here's the one that came in through DPS. So if we click on this arrow, it now shows us the line information. So the notebook, keyboard, mouse, and we can open up the PDF. And so that will download it onto the phone just like any other app does. And we can also upload files from the phone to attach them to this transaction if we want to as well. So if we want to approve it, we'll say fine as well. Not very original, but anyway. So we now submit it, and while it's going green there, that's while it's sending the message back to Payables Workflow on the desktop to say that invoice has been approved and move it along to the next person. And you can see this one's now gone from 4 down to 3 because that invoice has now gone to another person to do a second approval. So now if we hop back into our Sage 300, I just happen to know that that's gone to someone called the controller for the second approval. Oh, I could just look that up. Let's just do that actually. Let's say if the vendor rings up AP and asks where is a invoice sitting, so AP can come here and they can do an inquiry on this vendor. So this screen, you can see it lets you look at all the invoices that have gone through the workflow, but it also lets you look at invoices that are still going through the approval process. So if the vendor rings up and says, where's invoice 220223, the AP people can look at it and they can see here, this column next actioner, they can see it sitting with this person, so they can chase them up and ask them what they're gonna, when they're gonna approve that invoice. All right, so now I'll log in as that person, controller. So now we've looked at an approval through PW Web, we've looked at an approval through the smartphone app PT Go, and now the third way we can do an approval is inside Sage 300. So we'll go into the approval console here, and here's our invoice, so we can do quick review. Again, so what used to take 10 clicks per invoice is now down to 2 clicks per invoice. So approve that, scroll to the previous one, approve that, scroll to the previous one. Right, so, and then we click post, so that's now pushed, because that's the final approval of those invoices, payables workflows now push them over into accounts payable. So if we come and look in here, we'll see them sitting in this batch here. So they just keep coming into a batch within AP until you post that. We can open it up and have a look at it if we want to. So there's our entry there that came in through DPS. All right, so we'll just post that. And then the next thing, we'll hop over to the GL and just show you how you can drill down from the GL. So if the finance person is looking at the GL and sees this large balance, whoops, I double click, which is the wrong thing. We click on transactions. And if we're wondering what this invoice here is, if we're not sure what that's all about, we can double click and it takes us to the GL journal, and we drill again, takes us to the AP invoice. So with your current Sage system, you would be able to get to this point, but you won't have this drill. And it's because this drill gets added by payables workflows. So if we now click on that, it now takes us to the payables workflow AP invoice entry screen, where we can come into the event log. We can see who approved it. So we can see the division manager approved it and put in that comment, and then the controller approved it. And it also shows us, their Windows user ID and their IP address, that sort of thing. And then if we want to look at the PDF, we come over here, double click and open that up. Right, so finance people, find that the system's just, really beneficial, because they can just have all that information at their fingertips if they're wondering about an invoice. Right, so the next thing, let's just look at the payment side of things, and we'll just look at that very quickly. So this is now the payment approval. So I'll just show you one screen. So the way you generate the payment batch within AP stays exactly as it is today. Actually, let's just hop over to AP payments and just show you that. Payment batches, so the way you create the batch stays exactly the same, but where our workflow module comes into the process is that it will sort of intercept that batch to force the approvals to be made, if there are approvals to be made. If you're doing some payments of just $5 or whatever, then they might not need approving. But you can see here, it says awaiting approval. So that means that our workflow module is forcing those approvals to be made. So if I just show you this one screen, I think that'll sort of show how the system works. So if we come to our WN approval console, and you can see here payment. So with WN, we've got our different types of workflows. So here's a GL journal to approve, an AR invoice, and customers, changes to existing customers. But if we just come to AP payments, so here you can see we've got batch 122 and batch 124. Let's look at the top one. So if there's a payment here to Modern Design of $7,000. So if the finance person wants some more information about that, they can click on detail. That shows the invoices that are being paid by that payment. And then if they want more information about one of those invoices, they can double click, which takes them to the AB invoice entry. And then again, they can drill back, look at who approved it, and look at the PDF. Right, so really, I guess from the payment approval side of the process, and from the GL inquiry, and from AP vendor activity, so all three of those places will take you sort of back to the payables workflow screen, which is so just using that one screen to get back to it from different locations. All right, so that's now just another area I was wanting to show is, or a couple of other areas. Just on the credit cards processing. Actually, let's just look at one other area first. So document processing service. So what we looked at was an AP invoice. And so that, that's an important part of it. But the other area is the PO invoices and the whole three-way matching. So here, this one here, if we open that up, this is from Century Airlines. And so what happened, we did a purchase order originally for 2 airfares at $400. And then we did a receipt of those after the person did the traveling. And then the invoice came in. So you can see the invoice is slightly higher. It's $402 per airfare rather than $400. So here it's extracted it all perfectly. We click on process. This is now going to take us to the payables workflow PO invoice entry screen because it's a PO invoice rather than an AP invoice. And so there it's doing the matching of the lines of the invoice lines against the receipt lines. And so what it also does, it calculates the variance. So like I said before, the PO was for 2 at $400. The suppliers overcharged us, so it's a 0.5% over and $4 over. So it's quite a small variance. So, so what we do, so if we now click submit, so the system will now push this into the approval process, and you can see it's actually popping up that little message from the PO module. So what has actually happened there, if we look at the workflow events, it's checked the tolerance, the variance was within the limit of AP. So we've said to AP they've got they can approve up to a $10 variance sort of thing, because that's just for rounding. So therefore it's within tolerance, so it's pushed it straight through to the PO invoice system without anyone needing to review it. So if we click refresh, that one now disappears off the list. So now if we look at the hotels, this is a little bit different because the suppliers overcharged us quite significantly. So the purchase order was 3 nights at $200 per night. The suppliers overcharged us by $40 per night, which is quite a big overcharge. So we now push it through to the next screen. It does the matching, calculates the variances, and you can see there 20% variance, $120. So AP sort of are alerted to that, so they can just check that it's, whether it's been picked up properly or not. But if it has, then they can submit it, and the system's now doing the tolerance checking. And so if we now look here, what we can see is it checked the variance, which was $120. It was outside AP's limit, so it's gone it's sent it to the division manager for them to sign off that variance. All right, so that's really the tolerance checking and the three-way matching part of it. All right, and just probably the last area is just on credit cards. So, so the whole idea with credit cards is you get the file from your credit card company once a month, is what most companies seem to do, and so then that gives you, for each credit card holder, the list of all the expenses, and those are over here. So what you need to do is then just format that data into this format here. So we've made up an invoice number, we've got each person as a vendor, and we've done the geocoding. So it seems like about half of our customers do the geocoding and the other half just leave it on the suspense account and get the credit card person to do the coding. So the first step is to get the data from the credit card company and format it. Then the next step is to use our invoice importer. And so what this does, if we click on this here, it'll import all the data from the spreadsheet into this grid, and it validates all of the fields that can be validated. And you can see it's got this validation message here of pass, so that means everything's validated. And because it's validated, it's then created those transactions within payables workflow and push them into the workflow, which has then sort of sent them out to these people for them to attach their receipts and then carry on the rest of the process. So if we just go and very quickly look at what the person would get a email to say your expense report is ready for you to process or complete. So I'm logging in someone called sales. You can see they've got a lot of expense reports there. And so here's the one we brought in. So we can open it up in edit mode. We can come and put on a bit more information. And we can attach the receipts. Right, and then we save them. Right, so once the person does that for all of the lines on their expense report, then they would come to this screen, and so once they're finished, they then just come and change that to approve, and that then sends it along to their manager for them to check that it's all legitimate. All right, so that's just a quick look at the credit card side of things. So that's really the quick demo. So we've sort of covered quite a lot of ground there. So now if we just talk about the benefits, so we've got quite a few case studies on our website around AP automation, and we just get sort of consistent feedback from companies that put it in. Just the AP staff feel much more in control, and their efficiency's improved a lot. So I think just higher job satisfaction for AP, but also invoices get approved more quickly as well. And some companies have closed off their accounts. They brought that forward by a couple of days by putting in our AP automation. I won't go through all of these. I think I think they're all just, people are probably pretty familiar with a lot of them. And just on the expense side as well, quite a few companies we've talked to have just said the whole expense reporting is a real sort of pain point for them from an admin point of view. And so they've put in our solution and sort of had very positive feedback. Just, taking something that's quite painful and making it quite smooth. Right then, so just to recap on a few differentiators. So with our system, it's the data's all inside Sage 300. Yes, data sovereignties, you can relax from that point of view, and we don't have to worry about syncing between two systems. The configuration's all inside Sage 300, so that means it's easy for business partners and customers to learn it. There are quite a few people say to us our system's plug and play. It's quite easy to get it up and running. And it uses all the other parts of Sage 300, such as the AP vendor settings. Our data extraction, it's third generation. So like I said before, it's much more effective and works better for customers, but it's 75% cheaper than the old solutions, which is great. And it's all, if you want an end-to-end procure-to-pay process, then our AP automation, if you want to add purchasing down the track, we've got that covered as well. Yeah. All right, so that's all from me, I think, at this stage. Over to you, Bill.
Oh, thanks for that, Jamie. Actually, Jamie, the differentiators, I know you had them on a chart, but I always like to point out too that we have a really big difference in that compared to one or two other solutions out there, that we integrate with PJC, multiple currencies, and optional fields. So just a reminder to people, if they're looking at an AP automation solution, that if those things matter, just make sure you ask, because we certainly do handle that. So onto our Pacifictech modules. You saw payables workflow today. It's just a quick overview of what we have available to you. And in your payables workflow, Jamie covered that whole process, which is part of our AP automation and managing vendor invoices and authorizing payment approvals on those invoices. Purchasing workflow, which you didn't see today, is the whole requisitioning part that gets you to the point of actually having to pay an invoice. And we have web requisitions that go with that, which a lot of people find quite handy, and that integrates with what we have below there, the PW web. So if you wanted to go complete end-to-end to purchasing workflow, web requisitions, and then move right through to the AP automation and payables workflow, and you'd have our complete P2P, where also you can add in and actually workflow documents down at the bottom there is a really big piece of this, because that's of course what makes all of this paperless, and no more filing cabinets. And whether you're requisitioning and getting quotes from vendors, or you're getting invoices from vendors, all of this is being posted and attached directly to the transactions to review at any time by you or even an auditor if you want. So, and if you take a look here, vendor catalogs is another one that you can add in if you want as part of the requisitioning process to control vendor agreed pricing on specific items, where you may have set prices on items, specific vendors that you want to buy from, and expiry dates. So you can force people through the purchase requisition process to use specific vendors. Commitment accounting. This provides advanced fiscal management reporting of budgetary position, but also pending outstanding purchase orders. Funds availability. This is a really great one to use with the purchase requisition process. So with purchase requisitions, you have the ability to set cost center budgets so that you can actually see when you're requisitioning and approving requisitions where you stand for budget for a specific cost center. And you can actually view that also from PW Web. So funds availability is a really nice control to have if you want to get a handle on cost centers that are, various divisions or areas of the organization and spending. Workflow notifications, we touched on a number of times today, and that handles a number of things, right from approving vendor payments, where they can see who the approver, CFO or whoever's higher authority can actually see the invoices that are all approved by managers. So sort of like the old days when you had all the paper stack on the deck with the check paper clip to the top, and they can see electronically, oh, there's the invoice signed off by manager, there's another invoice, and here's the amount that we're going to pay them, approved. So that's workflow notifications. And it also handles the other control side of things, where you could set up workflows in various parts of your ERP that aren't part of your P2P that you do not want anybody changing unless it's approved by a higher authority, such as vendor bank accounts. Advanced stock take. Well, if you use IC at all, you'll know that Sage 300 has some limitations in their stock and inventory count process. We extend the stock take so that it makes it much easier for you. You can go back retroactively to any date in time and know what your position was. So if you're trying to deal with a month end or a year end, you're not panicking, maybe on a Sunday night, because that's when it happens, trying to do, get all your ins and outs in your accounts. Our Events Octave does all the reverse entries basically to get you to your position on any date and time. And we also have multiple worksheets to handle various groupings of inventory that you want to manage together instead of just in one worksheet. Audit Logger, again, sort of a compliance control feature. If you need to be able to or want to be able to see where people are changing or posting or doing things in the ERP, and it'll track their username, their IP, and that sort of thing. Internal issues, if you're using and consuming anything that you buy and store internally for internal consumption, it could be that you have trucks and you buy tires. You may even sell tires, but you also use tires. And so internal issues can be used as part of your requisition process to approve withdrawal of things that you've purchased that are in inventory locations for internal consumption to get a better handle and control over something like that. Key Communications extends a number of areas of your ERP. Key Communications gives you unlimited contacts for vendors and customers, but I think a big thing really now is that we have an advanced SMTP HTML document management process where you can, as expected, send out your invoices, statements, and all this sort of thing. But it does give a preview area before they go out. You can go in and actually see what is about to go out. You can double check some of the documents to make sure they look right and turn them off if you don't want to send them. But another big one is it'll actually create a document log. So later on, you sent an invoice out to somebody 2 months ago, and they, you're calling them because they haven't paid, and they say they didn't get the invoice, and you can go into the document log and you can verify the date that it was actually sent. And even better, you can say to them, I can click a resend button right now and you'll get it while we're on the phone. So that's a little bit of an overview on our modules. And just have a quick look here if you can for a second. These are some of the logos of end users in North America that use our solutions. We're quite proud of Barbados Tourism Marketing, Redpath Mining, Space Center Houston, Atlantic Gold, Fort McKay First Nation, Mattawa First Nation, Trevally, CWC Energy, Volunteers of America. So you can see there's quite a few organizations around North America that entrust us with our solutions, and we're hoping that you will too. Just a reminder, I'm your contact. My name again is Bill Fligg for North America, actually the Americas and Caribbean, really. So if you need anything and you would like information, product demos, videos, pricing, feel free to be in touch.
Thanks,
All right.
everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.